Possible fight of the night coming up this weekend, UFC 287 on the main card. Former top 15 stars. It's Trailblazer Kevin Holland taking on the Argentine Dagger, Santiago Ponzinibbio. And when you look at this matchup, Matt, it feels like a must-win fight for both of these guys, even though Ponzinibbio is coming off a performance bonus winning knockout in the third round over the great white Alex Morono. For Holland, he's dropped his last two to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Khamzat Chimaev. And in that Chimaev fight, UFC 279, he was originally due Daniel Rodriguez at 170, Chimaev at the weigh-in complications. So Holland fights Chimaev in the co-main event. Diaz ends up in the main event.
Do you know what fight I didn't watch once in preparation for this, though? Chimaev versus Kevin Holland. Because I'm here to tell you right now, you learn nothing about him fighting Santiago Ponzinibbio from that fight.
You look at it, so Holland ends up losing really quickly, contemplates retirement, kind of talks it out in the public eye, and then he draws a favorable matchup his last time out against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, a striker, a guy that's not going to take you down, or so everybody thought. And in that one, Matt, and I mean, that was the only full card video we've done start to bottom live. I'm never doing that again. We did it one time, whole thing live. It's never going to happen.
You guys don't realize how hard talking for 3 hours straight really is. It is unbearable.
But if you look at that one, Matt, I mean, what an odd fight it really was when it went back to the rewatch.
I gotta say this, though, too. What an odd fight Ponzinibbio versus Morono was in the rewatch, too, because I gotta be honest, Ponzinibbio losing 2 rounds to Alex Morono was a hard image to get out of my mind. And I know he ends up getting the win and he looks really good by the end of it. But this is my thing, though, and I think you'll agree with me. Just hear me out before you do anything.
I'm just fishing.
Alex Morono is right here to be hit. You don't gotta look for him because he's right there. Showtime Pettis teed off on him before he left and he was at 170 pounds. Kevin Holland is not nearly as easy to hit as Alex Morono was, so I just worry about Ponzinibbio. And what is he going to be able to do on some of the in-betweens if he's not just landing a lot of big power shots?
And I'll reel that big fish in, because for Ponzinibbio, he was originally due Robbie Lawler, a southpaw in that matchup.
But he fights a lot like Morono.
On 4 days' notice, he ends up with Alex Morono, an orthodox fighter. Morono looked great in the first 2 rounds. Like, I had Morono, he dropped him early. He was able to rock him twice and wobble him. In the third round, Morono was looking good. And then Ponzinibbio was able to land that right hand. It froze Alex Morono's face. Then he landed another and it dropped him.
It's just one of those situations where sometimes you can look at a win and it overshadows some of the negatives that happened during the fight. Sometimes you can look at a loss and that overshadows some of the positives. For Ponzinibbio, you're going to look at that green W on Tapology and feel a lot of confidence based on that last matchup. Sorry, but I don't necessarily feel that way is all I want to say.
Well, I mean, Bruce Buffer, while that fight was going on at the start, he was shooting his breath into Ponzinibbio's face. They were right here. It was really weird. So throw the picture up there for that one. But when you do look at it for Kevin Holland, the reason why I say that fight against Wonderboy was weird. First round's competitive. Second round's competitive. Third and fourth round were not competitive at all. It was all Wonderboy. And Holland, he was kind of touching on the fact that he broke his hand at the end of the fourth round. You kind of hear, and I threw it in my notes because I found it weird. You heard somebody say stop the fight, but you couldn't see the face. And then you saw Holland go, take these off, please. And he was talking about his gloves, and then he was holding his right hand. And I'll throw the tweet up there from Mark Raimondi. Like, Kevin Holland broke multiple bones in his hand, and they were displaced. And that was his right hand. So what's his laser weapon that he utilizes the best in all of these fights? It is his right hand, and that fight was back in December, so you have to wonder how Holland has kind of recouped and recovered after breaking, that many bones in his hand, and that being his best weapon. Now taking on a guy like Ponzinibbio, who, for Ponzinibbio, it was almost like he was really, really thinking the game in a lot of those early fights on his way up. And I know he had that long layoff, 2018 to 2021.
I thought he was going to be Usman before he got laid off. I've said this many times.
And Ponzinibbio, he came back. He got performance of the nighted against Li Jingliang, got knocked out in that one. But then he's had fight of the nights. He's had, the performance bonuses last time out. The split decision losses, one against Jeff Neal and one against Michel Pereira. The Pereira fight was a fight of the night.
Both very close.
Ponzinibbio's been putting on really fun performances, but why is that? Because the dance partner's been there to counter him.
And he gets hit.
He's been throwing kind of like off balance and then mixing combinations off balance to try and land that right hand power shot.
What Ponzinibbio's really good at is he'll throw a straight right into a left hook and then just try to set up the right hook after that initial left hook. Or I guess after the subsequent left hook is what I meant to say. But for Ponzinibbio, if he's not able to get into that rhythm, There isn't a lot outside of it. And I'm a big again, I thought he was going to beat Usman when they fought all the way back in Chile before Damian Maia ended up getting into that main event. I just think really highly of Ponzinibbio's skill set. My point is, I agree with everything you said about Kevin Holland and his hand health. But if at the end of a prediction video it comes down to, I think one guy has a lot of the answers to the other guys, but I'm a little bit worried about his health. I still have to pick the guy who I think has a lot of the counters for Ponzinibbio's skill set.
And I mean, Kevin Holland on his Instagram when he was announcing this fight, he's calling for the submission win over Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Called that a lot in the Tim Means fight.
And I wonder why he said that. Again, I just worry about that hand. And then when I do look at this matchup overall, Holland, he has that big reach advantage. He has the slight height advantage. If he can keep behind the jab, mix in the 1-2, and throw in a few of his kicks, I mean, Kevin Holland can definitely get a win. But Ponzinibbio, if he's able to crash the distance, Wonder Boy was able to get that late kind of takedown off of Holland, and he hits Holland with the right hand. Holland panics into a takedown attempt, and that kind of was the beginning of the end at the end of that fourth round when you had Wonder Boy just kind of pouring on the offense in the matchup. I don't know if I've ever seen somebody where one side of their head stayed in braids and the other side puffed up like a balloon.
Jimmy Butler when he pulled them out like 2 games ago.
Okay, Matt, I don't think people are watching regular season Miami Heat games, but this is going to take place
That's why I'm here, Craig, for the
Miami
basketball.
Dade Arena. Matt, when you look at it, Holland is favored in the matchup. We have a look at the Topology votes. Eager to see these because I don't know where to set the line. I'm going to say over-under on the Topology votes, 72.5% Holland.
Anything under 80%, I was going to say Holland.
Oh. And it's over 80%. So you have 1,835 total votes, 82% Holland, 59% by knockout for the 18% that are Ponzinibbio, 59% by decision. Matt, I have the Trailblazer Kevin Holland. Do you?
I do. I have a pretty good idea as to Ponzinibbio's skill set, I'd like to think. He throws a lot of heavy leg kicks. He does a lot of set combinations. But again, if he's not throwing those set combinations, he's not a guy who's going to really wow you with his output. That's been the really big thing that holds him back from fighting some of those elite guys in the division. If he did have sort of that top-tier output, again, Max Holloway's not a great example. Even a Neil Magny, for instance, I know he beat Neil Magny, but that's just because he has good leg kicks and a lot of power, so that tends to beat Neil Magny. So I think Ponzinibbio can make this an interesting fight, but I do have Kevin Holland in.
And I have Kevin Holland just based on the volume. I mean, but you do look at the volume numbers for Ponzinibbio. 5.02 to 4.65 is the comeback. Significant strikes landed per minute to absorb. If you look at it for Holland, 4.06 to 2.96. And I don't know if Ponzinibbio is going to have that game plan out of ATT to go for a lot of takedowns, but he could very well have success in a matchup against Holland with that. So, Matt, both of us going with the Trailblazer, Kevin Holland, to get back in the win column. But I'm really eager to hear from some of those commenters down below on this matchup. We have some big-time fights on this card, including Rob Font and Adrian Yanez. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.